Welcome to Table Talk, the Star Herald's online show where we talk about things going on in our community. I'm Maunette Loeks, Digital Editor of the Star Herald. This week I'm joined by Monica Shambaugh, Director of CAPstone, and Kelcie McBride, Director of CASA of Scottsbluff County. Thanks for joining me, ladies, to talk about the upcoming fundraiser, Light of Hope. First, let's take a minute and have each of you explain what your organizations do. First, Monica, we'll have you talk about CAPstone.
Sure. So CAPstone is the Child Advocacy Center. We're one of 7 child advocacy centers in the state of Nebraska. We handle the 11 counties in the Panhandle. We have our main office here in Gering, and then our satellite offices are in Sidney, Alliance, and Chadron. We have a staff of forensic interviewers and then advocates, and we see young people that have alleged either physical abuse, sexual abuse. They are witness to a violent crime. They've been recovered like in a drug endangered environment, or they've been recovered in a kidnapping. By state law, any of those things that a child has endured have to be seen by a forensic interviewer at our center. So when a call goes in to DHHS or to law enforcement and that intake is created, they come here. We see the young person, and it's a videotaped interview. And then our advocates, our family advocates, work with the non-offending caregivers. So they will work on if the child needs to get into mental health, if that family needs to be seen by doves. So we have our advocate working there. And so as soon as we're done with that interview, then law enforcement and Child Protective Services, they go out and they do the investigation, which is then provided to the county attorney's office. And then CASA ends up seeing the kids that we have seen here. So then they take it from there.
All right, that's a great segue over here to Kelcie. Can you tell us a little bit about CASA and what your organization does?
Yeah, thanks, Monica. So CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. We train a group of volunteers to advocate for kiddos in the county court system impacted by abuse and neglect. And our volunteers undergo about 30 hours of training. It's a big task, and so we want our volunteers to feel supported and prepared for that role. And we estimate it takes about 6 to 10 hours a month to make a difference in a child's life. Our volunteers get to know their kiddos. We ask them to visit their CASA kiddos at least once a month. And they also talk to people that are important in the child's life. So parents, foster parents, daycare providers, teachers, whoever they think would be appropriate, and be able to give information on how the child's doing, what they think is in the child's best interest. Eventually, after talking with the child and other people, our volunteers write a report that goes to the judge to give them as much information as possible so they can make informed decisions about the child's welfare and their placement.
And so what are some of the caseloads that you guys are seeing over the last year?
Yeah, so over the last year from July through June, it has been lower because of the impact of COVID. We advocated for about 56 kiddos this past year compared to about 72 the year prior. So a huge difference there. We typically serve about 32 to 37% of the cases that come in each year, and our goal this next year is to serve 40. It's kind of ambitious, but I just feel that it's so necessary to set those ambitious goals to help these kiddos, because they need someone to be that voice for them.
And you were talking that you also had seen an increase in volunteers as well, which was helping you with your caseloads as well?
Yes. So for the first time, we've finally been able to cross the plateau of the average of 30 volunteers. So we're at 34 volunteers right now, but we're always in need of more, especially male volunteers. We only have a few, and I think it's so important for some of these young boys that come in to have that positive male in their life. That can be somebody consistent for them, because our volunteers stay with the case from when it starts to when it ends, which is about 1.5 years on average. So yes, always in need of more volunteers. I want as many as possible. So that when things happen in volunteers' lives, if they decide that they need to take a little break because of something going on in their personal lives, that we can still serve as many kids as possible.
And Monica, what kind of caseload are you
Sure.
guys seeing over at CAPstone?
So to give you a little historical perspective from us, in 2019 was the first time we had ever done over 500 interviews in a year. And we ended up with 540 interviews that year. And we started off 2020 just gung-ho, and we hit it hard in January and February. We were really being used. And then when school shut off in the middle of March, the bottom just dropped out of everything. Well, when you think about kids going home, those mandatory reporters, which are our school personnel, weren't seeing kids anymore. And so not only did we see a decrease in the number of kids coming to the Advocacy Center, but the state of Nebraska saw a huge decrease in the number of intakes coming in to child protection and safety. So we really went down to about 20 interviews April, May, June, and then really started going back up as soon as kids were being seen out in like ball fields and pools, and then school started again. So in 2020 we did 474 interviews, and this year we were on track to hit about 300 by the end of June, and then all at once things cooled off again. Kids, were out of school, so those mandatory reporters again weren't seeing our kids, and intakes across the state in a lot of different places went way down again. So we're anticipating school starting now that we'll be back up, and I anticipate we'll be over the 500 mark again. It helps that I have a full-time interviewer here in Gering. I have a full-time interviewer in Chadron that takes care of Chadron and Alliance. And then I can interview and Shelley Thomas can interview. So there's no reason why we can't get interviews done when law enforcement and CPS are asking us to get them done.
And so what have been some of the challenges for both your organizations during the pandemic? How have you guys seen things change?
Well, for us, the cases that we saw changed a little bit. So, we always, when you think about the numbers coming in here, probably about 60% of those are usually sexual abuse of some sort. But we saw a lot more domestic violence cases in 2020, now 2019 and 2020, but part of that is because we had county attorneys that said, listen, domestic violence isn't just a one-time thing. We want those kids interviewed to find out what's been going on in that household. So domestic violence went up, and then last year we saw a lot more kids in here that were taking pictures of themselves, naked pictures of themselves, and sending it on the dark web. So people were getting a hold of them. Not quite sure how that always happens, but we've got kids 10, 11, 12 years of age, especially young girls that are doing that. So parents have got to pay attention to any kind of phone or laptop, anything that can take a picture of their kids. Really need to be paying attention to that, because we saw more cases of that last year.
Yeah. And how about you, Kelcie? What kind of challenges or changes has CASA seen over the pandemic?
Yeah, so we experienced a lot of the challenges that everywhere did, as far as people not feeling comfortable with doing visits in person. We had a lot of things restricted with being able to do stuff at court. At times that was just over the phone or video. But that's stuff that almost everyone has dealt with at one point or another. What we really saw was an increase in the severity of cases. Obviously, the cases that come into the county court system, they're all serious. They're all very serious. But some of them just have a higher level of trauma than some of these that you just don't expect to come in all of the time. So yeah, we've seen an increase in the severity and multiple issues as well, multiple concerns, whether that be substance use and domestic violence, or substance use and sexual assault. A lot of times it's not just one issue right now.
Right. So let's talk about Light of Hope, the reason we're here today. And Light of Hope is a fundraiser for both of your organizations. So can you tell us about Light of Hope and what it is?
Sure. So the Light of Hope event is our big fundraiser for CAPstone and CASA. We've been doing this now 13 years. This is our 13th event. We started in, I think, 2008. I think was the first one. Katie Camacho, one of our heroes, brought this fundraiser back. She had seen it done or heard about it being done in Colorado. I know she has some family down there, and when she brought it back to us, it was like, they do this breakfast event. People come in, they're there for 50 minutes, it's in and out. You give them some information about your organizations, you ask them to donate on the spot, you get people to fill a table so that you're not going out and trying to do all that, and you feed them a little bit and have them write a check and they're gone. And we did that for 11 years. We had it in the morning, and we used different venues throughout Scottsbluff and Gering for that. And then, 10 years. And then our 11th year, we decided, let's switch this up. We've done this for 10. Let's go to an evening event. Again, we're going to bring people in. We're going to sit them down. We're not going to keep them all night, but we're going to partner with the chamber. Both CASA and CAPstone are chamber businesses, so let's do a business after hours, and let's bring people in. Let's provide some hors d'oeuvres, have a cash bar. They can grab a drink. The organizations will talk about themselves. We'll bring in somebody to speak for a little bit. We'll ask them to give us some money again, and we'll get them on their way. So in 2019 was our first one that we had done, and we brought Laura Schroff in, who's a nationally known writer, and she wrote this wonderful book. We had her come in, she did a book signing. We just had a great event in 2019. Well, then 2020, with COVID, we did a no-show event. And a little perspective, the Valley is so good about supporting everything, but with regard to CAPstone and CASA, usually about every year we both take away about $17,000. So, and that's been consistent. Well, last year when we did the no-show event, people were even nicer, and they gave enough that we both took $20,000 from our no-show event. So this year, though, we really wanted to see people again. We want to be able to talk to people and tell them how our organizations continue to grow. And so this year it's going to be September 2nd, and we're going to do it at the Gering Civic Center at 5 o'clock. Again, a business after hours with the chamber. And at 5:30 or around there, Kelcie and I will talk about our organizations for a tad, and then we'll have Nicole Abbott speak. So I'll let Kelcie talk about Nicole Abbott.
All right, tell us about Nicole.
Yeah, so Nicole is our CASA champion this year. So Nebraska CASA asked for nominations across the state for someone that can represent and kind of be the face of CASA for some PSAs and help with recruitment. And Nicole was one of the people nominated, and she was the winner of that. So she is a former foster youth, and we really appreciate her being willing to share a little bit about her story. And then also just how much she's overcome and all of the success she's having now. We're so excited for her. Sounds like she has some pretty exciting stuff coming up, so we appreciate her fitting us into her schedule. And so we'll hear from her for a little bit, and then, as Monica said, we'll follow up with requesting donations and
All right.
Before people head out.
So if I'm unable to attend Light of Hope, how can I help both organizations?
Sure.
Yeah, so there's several ways that you can help, but as it relates directly to Light of Hope, we are hoping to have a virtual aspect of this event. We know that there has been an uptick in COVID cases. We know that some people are not able to be vaccinated or don't feel comfortable with it. Whatever reason, we want people to be able to participate. So stay tuned to our Facebook pages. We're still figuring out exactly how we want to do the virtual aspect, but everyone can still donate online. So if you want to participate or not, or if you can attend or not, you can always go online to CASA's website. It's CASA of SCB County. And then we have a little donate tab, and there's a Light of Hope module on there. So you can read a little bit more about Light of Hope, and then you can submit your donation online.
Awesome, awesome. And how during the year in the community can I help out first CASA and then CAPstone throughout the year?
Yeah, so CASA is always in need of volunteers. We want as many as possible, and we are really looking to diversify our volunteer base. And so one question I've been asked is, I don't look like a volunteer, can I still be one? There's no specific look to a volunteer. And again, we want to really diversify. We want people that look different, have different backgrounds, are different ages. We want anybody and everybody that has a heart for helping kids. We want to see if this could be a good fit for you. So always looking for volunteers. They do need to commit to being able to do 30 hours of training on the front end. But after that, it slows down, I promise. We estimate about 6 to 10 hours a month after that. Beyond that, we also have a volunteer board. So if anybody's interested in joining our board and helping guide our program, we are taking applications for that. Those are online, or you can contact us directly. And then we also take donations as well as in-kind donations.
Great, great. And then Monica, how can I help out CAPstone?
Sure. So when young people come in here for an interview and leave, we usually give them the option of taking something away. So they love stuffed animals. And Bev Overman, giving you a shout out there, she got rid of all of her Beanie Babies. So we have just about gone through all of those, and they've been such a huge hit. But we can always take, as any kind of new or slightly used stuffed animals. Our older kids, about 10 and up, really like journals, something to write on. So if you see anything out there that's on sale, ship them our way if you could, because we go through those quite frequently as well. We've had some organizations bring in juice boxes, food, prepackaged, fruit chews and things like that. Mm-hmm. And we can always use those things. But we also, that's in our budget as well. Mm-hmm. And then we too have a volunteer board. So I've got a couple of people that leave in the next year or two. So we're always looking to expand our board. Like to get some more gentlemen. And I think Kelcie talked about that too, that she needs guy volunteers or men volunteers. So we need some guys to step up.
And you're always in need of donations as well.
Sure. Our budget is about 74% from the state of Nebraska. We're both 501c3 organizations, nonprofit organizations. So for CAPstone, it's about 74% of my budget is from the state. I get about another 8% from VOCA, which is a grant from the Crime Commission. So then I've got about another 16 to 18% that we have to fill with private donations, which is kind of crazy because kids are required to come here for an interview. But we do well. And the Valley, I can't tell you how wonderful this area is for all the things that they support and what everybody supports, but they are very generous to CAPstone.
Great, great. And how about cash donations throughout the year for CASA? Is that something that your agency can always benefit from?
Absolutely. Like Monica said, we're 501c3 as well. And one thing that I think is important to note is that neither one of us are charging for services.
Right.
There are places that are nonprofits and also are able to charge for services, but we don't. Mm-hmm. And so we are funded solely off of grants and private donations. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our budget is based off of grants that we write, but we also depend on a significant amount of donations from Light of Hope to help stabilize our program and provide services. So yes, always accepting donations.
Awesome. And so Monica, remind us all of the dates of the Light of Hope.
Sure. Again, it's September 2nd. It's a Thursday. It's from 5 to around 7. It's at the Gehring Civic Center. And we're going to start out with coming in, grab a drink, grab some hors d'oeuvres. We'll probably start the program around 5:30 or so, and we'll have you out of there before 7.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you guys both for joining me to talk about Light of Hope. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And thank you to our readers for staying tuned to this week's episode of Table Talk.